GPS tracker caught cheating ex at affair partner's house. She looked miserable weeks after the breakup. My ex and I used to live in an upscale part of SoCal that had its fair share of wannabe real housewives. Or even Stepford wives. I generally avoided that type. However, my ex met some women through a charity auction and started spending a lot of time with them. I couldn't stand them, due to their greed and vanity, but I tried to play the role of the dutiful husband to make her happy. I even started integrating myself into the group of husbands married to these trophy wives. I found 2 or 3 guys I had something in common with, and we'd have fun telling stories about our younger days over cocktails or at barbecues. We ended up going on a number of trips, to Europe, Hawaii, and Mexico, with some of these couples before COVID. Sometimes, we would stay local and rent out a block of rooms at a beach hotel for an easy staycation. Once some restrictions were lifted during COVID, we immediately booked a block of rooms at that same hotel and celebrated our freedom. We had such a great time that we promised to go back annually to revisit that memory, which we did twice more. 2 years ago, my ex had a midlife crisis and decided to buy a classic car she had always wanted growing up. It barely ran, but she joined a car club where owners met on Saturday mornings for coffee, then drove their cars in a parade to another location. Since I'm not a car guy and didn't want to spend weekends talking to mechanics or trying to keep an old car alive, I told her it was a hobby we weren't going to share. Still, I supported the dream, even though I knew it would be a money pit. Especially since our kids were about to head off to college. She went ahead and bought the car. Then she started pouring thousands of dollars into upgrades and maintenance to keep it running. I saw the bills, and paid them, but she claimed she was getting great deals on parts and labor due to referrals from her car club, especially one guy. We'll call him Carlos. She said he had adopted her into the club. After a few months of car club weekends, I noticed she was coming home later and later on Saturdays. Her phone behavior changed. We'd always had an open phone policy. But one day, I tried to take a call on her phone, only to find she had changed her password. Her excuse? One of the wives was having problems with her husband, and she was giving confidential advice that she didn't want me to see, in case I ever spoke to him. Her behavior continued to shift. She became irritable at everything I did. She started passive-aggressively comparing me to other husbands, especially those having better financial years than me, as their businesses were less impacted by COVID than mine. We'd been through down cycles before. We had both cheated early in our marriage, but years of counseling had worked through it. We forgave each other. That was 20 years ago. But this time? The red flags were next level. I decided to start snooping. The next Friday night, I planted a GPS tracker on her car. The next morning, after she left for the car club, I logged into our family plan and looked at her phone and text activity. Lo and behold, a new number was spiking in activity. I paid for a name lookup service and found Carlos's full name and home address. I had some lunch, then watched the GPS on her car drive straight to Carlos's house, where she spent the afternoon effing her new boyfriend. I debated confronting her when she got home. Instead, I played sick and moved into a different bedroom, noting that I didn't want to infect her with my virus. She shrugged. Didn't say a word. That spoke volumes. Over the next few months, I went full gray rock. I started separating money and waited until our last child left for college. We barely spoke. But she still came into my room a few times for sex, for some reason. I decided I was only going to have anal with her thereafter. It wasn't her favorite, but she would usually orgasm more intensely from the experience, so she never complained. Aftercare was always awkward though. She would usually just get up and head back to her room, probably enjoying the thrill of having come in various orifices from both her husband and her boyfriend. Once our last child was settled into his dorm at college, I sat her down and told her I knew she had a boyfriend, and that I would be filing for divorce. She was in shock and denied everything. But I gave her Carlos's address and showed her the GPS log of time spent at that location, and her face went pale. She stammered and explained that she would park at his house and walk to a coffee shop a mile away, for exercise. I told her to stop making excuses and just own up to it. But instead, she flipped the script and blamed me. She said that if she did cheat, she had good reason, because I wasn't as good a provider as the other husbands in the group. She added that if we divorced, all the women in the group would force their husbands to ghost me, leaving me friendless. I called her bluff, believing that some of the guys actually had balls and would still be there for me. Later that day, I moved out, and the following week I filed for divorce. I settled into my new apartment and reached out to a couple of the guys in the group I was close to. They were initially sympathetic, but as she predicted, within 2 weeks I had been completely shut out of my friend group, as the men lived in fear of their wives. She bought me out of the house, and we settled the divorce relatively quickly. We managed to spend Christmas together with our kids that first year. I stopped following the social media of my former friends. They were dead to me. I decided to start rebuilding my life from scratch. I started an exercise and diet routine that transformed me back into my college body. I reconnected with old friends. I made new ones. I've dated a few nice women and had some memorable one-night stands, but haven't yet met anyone I want to settle down with anytime soon. We split the kids over the holidays this year, and it went smoothly. My oldest son came home from college over Easter break to visit his girlfriend. He spent Easter with my ex. It isn't a big holiday for me. The next day, he told me that my ex had introduced her new boyfriend to him, and amazingly enough, it was Carlos. I assumed she had been sneaking around with him still, trying to maintain the illusion she hadn't been a cheater, but I guess she decided that a year was enough to make it official. I wasn't surprised. But curiosity got the best of me. Last night, I realized our annual staycation at the beach was this past week. So I logged onto social media and found a photo wall from one of the women who hadn't blocked me. Sure enough, the entire group of couples was at the hotel, and my ex and Carlos were featured in the middle, with her showing off her new engagement ring in the photos. I've done a lot of work over the past 2 years processing the end of my relationship, but I have to admit, seeing him living my life with my ex and my old friends was a punch in the gut. Not a knockout blow, mind you, but enough of a trigger to let me know I still have a little work left before I'm fully healed. Kudos to her, I guess, for finally finding a use for that classic car, other than draining my wallet. Apparently, it was great for driving straight into Carlos's arms. And isn't it charming how your supposed friends folded like cheap lawn chairs at the first sign of marital discord? Clearly, the only thing they lacked more than loyalty was a backbone. Your approach to her infidelity? Masterful. Moving into a different bedroom, letting her twist in her own lies, and bonus points for limiting intimacy to something she found uncomfortable. Sometimes poetic justice doesn't come in court. It comes in silence, detachment, and a little discomfort served cold. Yeah, it stings seeing her with an engagement ring on your old buddy. But remember, you dodged a bullet. Update. Ex-wife cheated 2 years ago. Still denies his existence. So I posted my story about how my ex-wife met a guy through a car club while we were married. She proceeded to have a full-on affair with him. I figured it out using phone records and a GPS tracker in her car, and realized she was hiding his existence entirely from me. I waited a few months, until the day after we dropped our last child off at college. Then I confronted her. She denied it. And I moved out. And I got divorced. Update. She's still denying her affair partner. After 2 years. He's younger, so I know she's since been losing weight via Ozempic and posting about her wellness journey. Since I moved out, I've largely been no contact with her, outside of divorce logistics and discussions regarding our kids. One of our children had a graduation last week, and we had to attend the same ceremony and celebrations. I vowed to be kind, gray rock her, and outwardly present the image of a happy former couple who get along. For some reason, we ended up sitting next to each other during the walkthrough ceremony, and had an hour to kill before the event started. She started asking personal questions about my life, which I largely evaded. Important note. Over Easter break, she introduced her friend, aka the affair partner, to our children. They later told me about him and asked if I knew. I answered yes, but didn't provide any more information. I didn't want to poison their perception. Since we had time to kill, I decided to flip the script and asked, "So, are you happy with your boyfriend?" She immediately denied the relationship and said he was just a friend. I laughed. "You've been dating him for more than 2 years. If I were him, I'd be pissed at not being called a boyfriend." She started getting emotional. Choked up. Said she had a lot of regrets about the choices she made. And that she doesn't like how life turned out. I asked her to be specific. "What choices do you regret making?" She went quiet. I ended the conversation feeling pity for her. She's been living a lie for so long that she literally has no concept of the truth, nor will she ever take responsibility for her role in the demise of our marriage. I drove home feeling like a winner, maybe for the first time since this whole mess began. It gets better. Let's see what the community thinks. First up, tell your kids about her affair. They're old enough now. If I were in your shoes, I would just say, "I need to be honest with you. This was the reason for the divorce. I'm only telling you now because I didn't want to negatively affect you while you were still at home. She is still your mother and I'm still your father, but she's no longer the woman I fell in love with and married. You'll always be my top priority, but I need to set the record straight so I can move on with my life. Then let them decide how they want to move forward with her." Someone else chimes in. "Soon she'll actually regret her actions and try to come back. Stay strong. Let her deal with the wreckage she created." Another adds, "A classic case where the cheater finds out the grass isn't greener on the other side. Her deflection about Carlos is code for, the new wore off and he's not what I thought he was. And you know what? Tough. Crap. She deserves every ounce of humiliation and disappointment that comes her way. She threw away a marriage over a fantasy, and now reality's here with the receipt. Don't take her back, no matter how much she spirals. She chose the sleazeball. Let her keep him." And my personal favorite. "So she's still denying Carlos's existence, after 2 years? That's dedication to delusion. Her getting choked up and saying she has regrets, but no specifics? That's the emotional equivalent of a choose-your-own-adventure book, where every ending sucks. She regrets her choices? No, she regrets choosing someone whose spark plugs aren't firing like she thought. Too bad. So sad. Telling your kids the truth is a solid plan. They're old enough to hear the director's cut of this drama, not the PG-rated version. So yes, it does get better. Because while she's stuck rewriting history and regretting her very public, poor decisions, you're cruising down the road to a happier, Carlos-free future. Enjoy the ride. What do you make of this? What would you have done? Thanks for joining us today. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter in the Cheaters Never Win saga. See you next time.